This is a teaching, learning, and technology roundtable. We have been doing these this is our third year. It's a joint production with Instructional Design Services. My co-facilitators, Jessica Delmonico, is here today. And every month or every other month or so, we bring you a new topic, or we ask you to bring us a topic, and we talk about it. We talk about it over Zoom and in person. So I'm just going to pan. So our, oh, that's not the right video. That's okay. We do have an in-person audience today. So in-person audience, do you want to wave? There they are. And then, of course, we have our lovely Zoom audience. So thank you so much for joining us. Today, again, it's a shell share with Sue Yi, who's an information technology instructor. And if you attended the fall opening, you got a little glimpse of what she's been working on when she presented. And when we saw that, we knew we wanted to have her back to give us a little deeper dive into the shells, because they're just really well done, and to talk to her more about her process. So I'm going to turn it over to Sue and let Sue kind of take us through the shells, right? The work that you've done, and then we'll have time for questions and comments and just some discussion. So thanks so much for being here, and thank all of you for being here. And all you.
Thank you so much. All right. So thank you so much for having me today. As Naomi mentioned, I presented a little bit at the fall opening, and I'm excited to share because you get to actually see the course in real time versus seeing some pictures on a slide, even though I'm very proud of my PowerPoint slides. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of dive in, and I'll explain what behavior-driven development is once I show you the modules page. But so just kind of, I'm going to kind of go top to bottom, starting with the home page. So first things first, I worked with IDS on this, and just mainly going off of the exemplary template. So the homepage is pretty much the template that you get. I do have an intro video to the class that actually developed through Naomi's humanizing class, so I highly recommend that. And then you'll notice I use bullet points a lot. That's because I'm trying to make things accessible and avoid the use of tables. And you'll notice I also avoid using images where alt text is necessary, but I still use images. So I'll try to note that every time an image comes up or a place where I removed a table, and try to kind of mention that. So I'm going to jump over to the syllabus now. And what I really like about this syllabus is that it's built in. Previously, with the first year when I started, I was teaching 5 or 6 classes, and I'm actually not a very organized person. And so when I was dealing with all of these Word documents or PDFs, I had to convert and then make changes and then upload. And I just really didn't like that process. And so having the Canvas or the syllabus built into the Canvas is nice. It's helpful for the students, because we don't want to assume that they have the means to open a PDF or a Word document. So it just has it built in, but also the instructors don't necessarily need an external copy of your syllabus. They can just get a shell, and then they have the syllabus built in. So IDS, you can see it's formatted very similarly to the template, and IDS helped me to get that formatted nicely. And it's also completely accessible. No use of tables. I know sometimes we like to use tables, but it just makes things automatically accessible to kind of get rid of them. And again, I like my bulleted list. So you'll see a lot of things as bullet points. So the textbook information is just a simple bulleted list, as well as if I scroll down, there's the grading scale and the course points. I used to have these as tables, but then as I kept working with IDS, I realized how inaccessible tables can be. So I just completely removed it and just simplified the process. And then, yeah, do you have a question?
Sorry, to interrupt.
Sure.
I just was wondering, with accessible as evidence, which really nice,
Mhm.
since it's integrated for the students that are able, can they download it or print it directly from that integrated page, or is it something separate?
I actually haven't had students ask for a downloaded version yet, but that is one caveat, is that it's a little difficult to get a downloaded copy of this. What you could do is have some sort of software, which I have on my side, where it screen captures the entire thing and it automatically scrolls to get everything. But for some reason, when you try to print as to try to export it, it has a lot of blank pages. And so that's one side, but for me personally, I think there's a lot more benefits to having it built in, thank you, right now than having a separate Word document. Yeah,
So if
another
you
question?
have a syllabus like this, how do you get it to your dean's office?
I usually have a separate screen capture that exports it as an image. And then I will submit that, but for students right now, yeah, it's kind of limited to it, like it's built into Canvas, but again, I've done this for the past year and a half and I haven't had students ask for a separate copy. So yeah, great questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's one other thing with the syllabus that when it's built in, I really like, because before I would have all these due dates that I would have to manually change in the Word document. And this time, when you update your due dates in Canvas, it's just automatically reflected here. So it saves a ton of time. You also can, again, eliminate the use of a table, and it's all built in together. Any other thoughts, questions on that so far? I'll try to check the chat as well.
Just-
Oh, sure.
In case they can-
Thank you. And one last thing before I jump to the modules page, the navigation, I always limit the options to home, syllabus, and announcements just automatically publish modules, people, and grades. And that here, if I view as a student, you can see that I'm only seeing 5 links. And even though this class has discussions and assignments, I don't like to publish that because it just makes it confusing for the students to defer to, do I look at the modules page or the assignments page? So going over to the modules page. So since I don't have slides, I'm gonna try to explain what behavior-driven development is, looking at the module topics. So if I collapse all of these, looking at the first, we only need to see the first 4 modules, but so behavior-driven development is a collaborative approach. You usually see it in software development, but you work in a team usually that consists of a project manager, a software developer, and a software tester. And students that take this class act as the software tester in this team. And you can also pretend like you're the software tester here. So what happens is in this process, you start with the discovery phase, and that is when there is some sort of problem or thing that you want to solve, that you want to translate to a product or some sort of application, you have to meet with your stakeholders or your end users. An example is say that students are coming to you and they're complaining about how difficult it is to find their textbook information on the textbook website. Like that's, you know, that has happened before. And so you are given this problem and the students in this case are the stakeholders. And so the project manager will kind of gather all of this feedback, but we don't know how to fix the problem. And so the manager will go back to their team, the developer and the tester, you being the tester, and the three of you will work together to kind of brainstorm, what could this look like? How could we create some sort of starting point to fix this problem or create a solution? And once you define roughly what that looks like, I'm just going to throw out an example. We could have an administrative page for book managers. That is an example. And so once we have that idea, you can jump to the formulation phase where you have more defined deliverables. So what does the road look like to get to this end product of this administrative page for bookstore managers? Once that is defined, the tester, you, are now more in your individual role to automate test scenarios. And the test scenarios are meant to ensure that as the product is getting developed, that things are just working the way that they should. And you develop this product through a language called Gherkin. It's not the prettiest word. But I mention that because there are some things implemented in this course that use Cucumber. And Cucumber is a platform where you write your Gherkin and then it automates those test scenarios. And so when you're writing Gherkin in Cucumber, there is a company that has created a Cucumber Studio, and it's the most popular Cucumber platform. And what I've done is implemented their learning academy with this course. And so by module 8, students can take the Smart Bear Cucumber certification exam and get that certification as well. And they can post it on LinkedIn and on the resume as well. So yeah, I'll kind of show you that once we look more specifically into the assignments, but I'll start back up at the top. And you can see there's this instructor resources section. You typically would have some sort of instructor resources section, but what we have here is this notebook that, I mean, it's meant for if you are ill or you cannot teach this class, or you're not assigned this class for a certain quarter, it should be very easily adoptable by other instructors. So in info, we have a whole collection of info courses that have their own notebooks. And it's just a page where you have all the instructor notes, how to teach that specific module, or, have the repository of all the learning materials and how to grade certain things and things like that. So that is linked. And then the course outline and map are a couple of artifacts that you create when you go to create a class. So I just have a copy there.
What application are you using for the instructor notebook? What is it linked out to?
So the instructor notebook is a OneNote document. So it's very, changeable, and you can kind of make it collaborative. If someone is like, hey, there's a typo here, I can fix that. So yeah, let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So I haven't taught this class yet. There's not a ton of notes, but eventually starts getting built out over time. If you notice that one module has some things here that needs to get kind of highlighted, but you have kind of general notes where you help the instructor set up the course. There's notes on grading. So I mentioned that every single assignment has rubrics. Is there extra credit? No, there's no extra credit. So I just kind of mentioned things like that. Textbook information, logins that the instructor needs. I kind of mention what the certification is and just, things that I would want to know when I go into teaching a class. And then instructor notes, every single module has just even quick notes about the module, and it doesn't have to be paragraphs and paragraphs long, but it kind of helps to keep the Canvas course cleaner, because I know sometimes we have unpublished pages and that can get a little cluttered, so it kind of helps with that as well. And then we also, at least with this notebook, we have announcement templates. So sometimes, I know other instructors have individual module announcements, but yeah, that's kind of.
Is that the added people to it as they teach it, to share that notebook with them?
I believe the folder that this notebook is in is shared by all of the faculty members. So they have access to all of the course notebooks. So it's also really nice because I get inspiration from other instructors and how they set up their course notebooks. And it's, yeah, not unique to what I'm doing. So let me go back to the Canvas page. I cannot see my tabs. I'm sorry. This is one thing. All right, that works. So I'm not going to go through every single page, but what I will highlight is this course objectives and tasks is a page that the exemplary template has, and so it follows all of the course objectives and tasks follow the same format that you'll see for every module. And so it just highlights, these are the course objectives, these are overall tasks for the course. And then if you go more granular into a specific module objectives and tasks, it's specific to the module. So module 1 objectives, and then module 1 tasks. We always say that, we don't know if students actually look at it or not, but it's still good to have there. And then the course expectations quiz is a yes or no on the syllabus, or yes or no questions on the syllabus. And I use that for the census. I think I got that idea from several other instructors. So I'm always trying to get ideas from other places and other courses. The course textbook, I will just mention here, I mentioned that when I use images, I try to avoid using alt text. And so here it's actually marked as a decorative image because the information is provided directly below the image. And I'm not an expert in writing alt text. And so I try to avoid it when I can. I know it's not always possible when you have graphs or more data-driven images, but in this case, I am able to avoid writing alt text. So that's just an example of how I go about having the image. And I still include an image because I want to add a little bit of personality and design to the course and not just have it be all text. Not alt text, but all text. So I'll show you an example now of what the learning page looks like. And every single learning page has the same format. This course also doesn't have lecture videos because I'm providing the videos through the Smart Bear Cucumber Learning Academy. So those have 15 to 35-minute videos. So I was kind of fortunate to be able to use that. But otherwise, if I do have videos, it is a separate page outside of the learning section. So I always like to handpick and select a nice quote. Also add a little bit of personality to the class. So I always have a quote at the top and then reference the textbook in every single module, just in case. And what I always do is have information that does not really change towards the top. So when you're thinking about the hierarchy of information, I always have unchanging information at the top, and then information that tends to change, I have it towards the bottom. And that way, when students are looking at this, the first part of the screen that they tend to look at is kind of a little around the middle. And if they see that it's familiar, that's a little less like cognitive load. So I try to think about these things too. Definitely not an expert in the psychology, but they'll kind of start noticing that the readings that do change are towards the bottom. So when you look at this and you compare it to, say, module 3, you immediately can identify that towards the top, it doesn't really change, but there's additional stuff towards the bottom. So I always like to keep information categorized like that. And then I always have a reflex section. Obviously, the questions are slightly different, but these are questions I kind of think of on my own that I incorporate. They're not graded, but hopefully it'll help the students think about the topic. And then the questions are very, very similarly worded to the discussion questions too. So not totally unrelated in that regard. I won't go through every single discussion or assignment, but I do want to highlight a few. So the module 1 discussion is unique in that it has parts. And I tried to think what's a good way to organize a more complicated discussion and try to pare down the directions a little bit more clearly. So when you look at this, it doesn't look like a lot of work was put into this, but it was so much thinking on my end about what headers do I need? How do I phrase the headers? How do I pare down the wording of every single bullet point? Do the bullet points need to be numbered? Do they need to be unnumbered? And so thinking about all of these details to really try to guide the student as much as possible. So if it really is a linear process, it's always a numbered list. If it's a list of, here are some notes to know about this thing, I always make it unbulleted or unnumbered bulleted list. So that's an example of kind of how I structure text on my discussion and assignment pages. This module 1 assignment, I know I'm focusing a lot on module 1, but it is the only assignment in this whole course that has an attached document. Everything else, discussion, assignment, final project, is all integrated into Canvas. So again, I haven't taught this class yet, but I'm very curious to see how this goes. This is the one variable that has an external requirement to use a PDF or a Word document, but everything else does not require Microsoft products or anything like that.
What about that is different? How did you make that in your mind, that difference? Like, I need to use it here.
So the question was, why did I decide that this is the one assignment that needed an external document? Was this specific exercise kind of goes against like all of my accessibility rules, because when you look at this document, this feature mining example is all tables, which is not required. So I kind of thought, I'm gonna try this out. The one place where it's an external document and it uses a table. And unfortunately, it's a little slow to load, but it looks like boxes of, sections where you can kind of put stuff, but, oh, here we go. So it's a simple table. It still is accessible as a table, but typically when you look at a feature mining example, it looks exactly like this. So I didn't want to necessarily stray away from that design. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm still, totally not sure if it needs to be a table. But yeah, everything else I have integrated, and I'll kind of show you examples of that. And I always like to limit the file types. If you are working with a lot of Word documents, I restrict it to docx or PDF. I've had a lot of situations that, that do not get uploaded as a document. So it just kind of saves you some time as well, and the students' time. While we're here, yeah. You have a question? Oh, no.
Did you say you can restrict the ability of the documents that you use just for basically like, ease of use? Is that what I was hearing? So you're cautious about, you see like those other .rtx that get uploaded and there's some problematic. I was just making sure I got that right.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have issues working with multiple file types, like you don't mind if a student uploads an RTF or a .text file or things like that, I think that's okay. But I usually like to restrict mine to 1 or 2. And a lot of the times when we're working in a programming class, we often deal with zipping files or compressing. And so when we leave it open, a lot of the time students will not zip the file. So it just kind of helps guide them to say, okay, I need to zip this. And then, yeah, so the kind of the same idea here. So we can finally move past module 1. I will just kind of skip to module 2, the assignment, just to reemphasize again the use of not needing alt text. So this assignment is a game where students will write sticky notes, they brainstorm and then categorize those sticky notes. They're not required to use sticky notes, and I don't require them to use sticky notes because I don't want to assume that they have those materials available, but I included this image because it's helpful for us who don't need alt text, and we can see what the game kind of involves. But instead of putting the alt text with the image, I have the directions again for the game directly below the image, and that works just as the same. So it's just, again, not using alt text, but still utilizing images here. So directions, they're just sectioned off with headers, and then they can just submit through the Canvas, the built-in Canvas text box. Trying to make sure I have everything covered, but I'm going to go back to this module 2 because I want to briefly touch on rubrics. So a lot of my rubrics in my other classes, they're very fleshed out. And as I teach the course throughout different quarters, I always find myself refining the rubrics. And what I'm trying this time is having a very broad starter rubric that has general categories. So this one you can see only has 2 categories with simple, straightforward points. And I'm curious to see how much refining I will need to do with that. But I wanted to incorporate a rubric anyway to, 1, give students a starting point with what they're looking out for with their grades. But also for you as the instructor or any other instructor, it still is a great starting point to think about, how do I grade this versus not having a rubric? But as some of you know, these rubrics can get very convoluted, so if you don't use rubrics right now, I think having something as a starter is great than not having any rubric at all. I'm gonna jump down to module 4 because module 4 and 5 are the only two sections that have videos for the assignment. And so in terms of the actual assignment pages, they're not that different. So I'm not gonna really go too much into these, but this is just kind of a briefing of what this looks like. And I restrict it as a zip file type. And you can see, a general rubric, but this assignment is actually kind of a walkthrough because it's so technical. I decided instead of having the instructions written out or making them too broad, what's the best way to guide the students to be successful? So I thought I'll just record some videos and, post them in a Canvas for them. And so that's what I did. And I timestamped them. They all have closed captions. I made sure to edit down any pauses or or, situations like that. And so it's a very simple list of videos. I just use VidGrid. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. First time around. But I always like to incorporate instructor videos anyway, so I'm happy to at least have them somewhere. I think it just adds a little bit of a human element, even though they have the Smart Bear videos, but obviously that's not the instructor. Module 5, and if you scroll all the way down and see module 9 and 10, there's these midterm and end of course surveys. I just grabbed these from the Commons and then kind of simplified them down with the instructions here. Made it pretty simple and short. And I did end up making them graded because while I haven't taught the course yet, the other courses where I do have this and it's ungraded, students have not filled out. So just having a little bit of an incentive here. I'm jumping around a little bit, but before I move on to any other highlights, you'll kind of notice that a lot of the modules are structured exactly the same. And that was intentional. I wanted the module size to be as short as possible. And so I decided to limit as much as I can to 4 pages max. So I have objectives, learning, discussion, assignment. Objectives, learning, discussion, assignment. And, the only exceptions are 4 and 5 with the assignment videos. But to follow the same pattern, I'm trying to reduce the cognitive load for students, make it predictable for students. And week after week, they can see, okay, this is the same exact formatting. I don't have to expect something new, even though the learning requirements are different. And so that's something I considered with structuring the module pages here. So I'm going to skip down to the module 8 assignment. It's the Smart Bear Cucumber exam. So students will log into their Smart Bear account, and by the end of module 8, they get to take a short 18-question exam, and I kind of list out how many attempts they have, how many minutes, what types of questions. The certification exam looks like. So just preparing the student on what to expect and how much time that they'll need to dedicate. And it's great because again, they can post this to their LinkedIn. They upload this, that's their grade that they get for this assignment as well. It's super exciting because they get kind of two things in one in this class. They get the certification, but also in the last 2 weeks, they get to focus on a final project. And hopefully by the time I get to teach this course for the first time, there will be enough enrollment to work in groups, but sometimes the enrollment can be a little low, but the final project goes through the same behavior-driven development process. So when I kind of take a look at this, again, all of the instructions are integrated into Canvas, but every single part goes through the phase of behavior-driven. So discovery phase, formulation, automation, and there is a written reflection. Usually when you are working in a team in an actual setting, you have a almost 3-hour meeting at the end of the 2-week cycle to kind of reflect together. And so that's what the written reflection is serving. And they get 2 weeks in the course to practice this process. And usually in the industry, it is a 2-week process. Sometimes it's 1 week, sometimes it's 3, but yeah, 2 weeks is kind of the best middle spot. So they'll realistically be able to follow that process, and then they can add all of these artifacts to a portfolio resume, and that's intended to be set up like that too. So one last thing I want to mention, this discussion, it's very interesting because these 2 questions, what's one takeaway, or is there anything you wish was covered in this class? I have implemented in my other courses, and I get so much incredible feedback. I just want to copy paste all of the student responses into some sort of testimonial portfolio because students, for one, it's probably because it's graded, but I do wonder if it's because it's an open discussion format versus the closed survey response. But students are just very thorough and honest with what they say on these discussion boards. So I'm excited to see what the first iteration of their responses are with these questions. And it's also a great way for me to improve upon the class faster. If there was anything that they wish was covered, I can quickly go back and incorporate that. And that's the only discussion that does not have a rubric because it's meant to be more of, hey, complete this and you get the full points for it. So that's the one exception, but I think other than that, I mean, the one other thing, it's not related to a clean course design, but I do stand by having all of my assignments and discussions at most, if possible, at 10 points. And I've had so many students actually say, oh, this is the first class I've taken that has so few points. But then I say, it's not that different if it's 100 or if it's 1 point. And I've taken a course where every single assignment was 1 million. I've taken classes where every single.
I mean, I'm just really taken with the course and how it looks for students and the thoughtfulness that went into designing it. And I'm just wondering if there was a student that you worked with that prompted you to really dig in to figure out how to make it the most accessible and, the sort of the lowest cognitive load navigation type course, or was it your own experiences, or kind of what got you into this?
That's a really great question.
Might need to
So,
repeat it.
yeah, So the question was there a student or personal experience that has gotten me to this point of thinking about accessibility and clean design? And I think, so I'm in my third year of teaching, and I've thought about this myself because I have wondered, why do I approach my Canvas design like this and emphasize that versus other, um, but I think it's really because I like to think that way. And so if I can organize it in a way that makes sense for me, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not very organized. My course, you know, might not reflect that, which is great, but I really want things to be broken out to the point that someone who's new to tech can understand the course, because there's a lot of technical courses that I've even taken that the instructions just don't make sense to me. So I don't want to repeat that for other students either. So I guess, yeah, kind of personal, but I think there are a lot of students that, maybe don't realize, but they maybe appreciate how the directions are worded or something like that, but.
I know you work with IDS, oh, sorry, just a quick follow-up, and then you work with IDS quite a bit. Do you have just a quick resource you might recommend? For you one?
Yeah, I worked with IDS, and then honestly, the courses or classes that Naomi, that you have facilitated have helped me think also about equitable teaching and grading, and the humanizing course that you facilitate as well. So Naomi's reading groups in the winter are a great option, and they've really like transformed the way I've like thought about teaching and course design too. Yeah.
I just had like a comment / compliment for you.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed, although that you didn't say this, is the devil really is in the details. And it's very easy to like gloss over that if you're in a hurry or when you're trying to build one of those shells, but it also speaks to the fact of how you put the effort in to condition students in a proper way. And what I mean by that is, if your modules are consistent,
Mhm.
and they know what to expect, module after module, you're conditioning those students to perform better, but also to know what they're dealing with as they're moving through a course. And I think that's extremely important, because you can accidentally condition students into something that's not good for them. But in the case that you've done it, I think it's great, so it's a compliment to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the comment was how the course is set up in a way to condition the students, basically guide them in the right direction, so that all the modules are set up to be very predictable and consistent, and that helps the student be guided in the right direction. So thank you for that. I was definitely think more about more questions, but I just wanted to also say as I was practicing this, because I always practice for my presentations, I was thinking so much about how I'm in my third year. I'm learning so much about teaching and delivering, and I'm also coming into this. I think my background is in design, and so it's interesting to be able to share this my knowledge and my experiences, because I think a lot of us come into it learning teaching, but also maybe not having exposure to design practices. And so my plug is, if you invite me again, I would love to speak on design practices. So not necessarily graphic design, but design that maybe will help you also think about course design.
You're invited.
Thank you. I would love that. I'm very passionate about design. It works with my brain. I love it. I love talking about it. I love thinking about it. So yeah.
I wanted to ask, since there aren't in the chat, I do have another one, and it's about the micro credential, and I know you haven't
Oh,
taught
sure.
anybody in this class yet.
Right, yeah, no, not yet.
But thinking about it, what do you think? How are you gonna talk to students about the value of it, and what do you think students are gonna feel is the value of it? Like, will they know right away this is something they can take and use? How are you gonna sort of introduce that concept to them?
Yeah, I think because the course is, I have it in my intro video, how I talk about how the course directly reflects the process in the industry. The certificate or the micro credential that they take is the exact same material that they learn each week. It's just bite-sized. And then by module 8, it kind of feels like it was just another learning activity that they were able to get there. But I did also think about just publishing another either video or a page that just further emphasizes the importance of that that certificate. But Smart Bear, I mean, yeah, the students won't know that Smart Bear is the largest leading company for behavior-driven development. So, I mean, even a detail like that would be helpful for students to know. Yeah. And maybe that will emphasize the importance of the exam that they take or the micro credential that they get. But I think, I don't know, I think students get excited about something that they can post to their LinkedIn. So I don't know, maybe that's just an assumption too.
Does it work with our Canvas credentials?
I don't think it does because it's just an image, but I haven't tried that either. It's the first course I've implemented an external certificate.
Just to kind of look at, see if we get it.
Yeah, I would be curious about that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
thank you
wrote
so
a ton,
much.
I took a ton of notes.
Oh, thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks to the audience for being here, especially the folks to look at and talk to. I'll just say thanks to everybody on Zoom too. We appreciate you being here. Have a great day, and Sue, you'll take email questions, follow-up things. Are you happy to?
Yeah, I'm happy to continue the conversation and thank you again for having me. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
you.